We're on.
Awesome. Okay, thanks so much, everybody. It is 6:01, so I'm going to welcome everyone to the Town Council work session for April 2nd, 2025. And today we are talking about the Water Master Plan, and we've got some folks that are going to give us a lovely presentation on it.
Thanks for coming in tonight for the work session. Tonight we're going to give a 15-20-minute presentation on the Water Master Plan. It's going to be given by Devin Smith from Underwood Engineers and Jamie Emery from Emery Garrett, which is a subsidiary of GZA.
Great, thank you all. Pleasure to be here.
Is it not working?
Can you guys hear me okay?
Is that working?
Nope. Not working, I'm sorry.
I'm just not.
Ross.
He tries that with everything.
Yeah. There we go.
Okay,
That's the same button.
great.
Underwood is better than underwater.
Yeah, we've been called that before. Sorry, disappointing.
It's not yet.
It's not working again.
Little touch. Yeah.
Okay, you know what? Yeah, change it a little for you. Touch the screen. It's like a big iPad. No, you just have to.
Oh, now it's working.
Okay. Try that.
Whoa.
All right,
Restart it.
great. So thank you. We're here to talk about the Water System Master Plan. We've been working on it for about a year. So Water System Master Plan is a great thing you can do. It's a holistic view of every part of the water system. So there's a lot to get through. And in short, your system's in great shape. There's a few deficiencies that we'll highlight and give you a roadmap for the next 20 years. And without further ado, just quickly on the history. The origin of the water system started back in the 1890s. There you can see some of the original 4 miles of cast iron pipe. Some of it's still in service today, and the original water source on Fullett's Brook. In the 70s and 80s, things really started to take off with the development of the Bennett and Sewell wells and the Great Hill Tank. In the 90s and early 2000s, we can see that the surface water treatment plant was shut down. But then, due to declining well levels in Bennett and Sewell, it was brought back online, and then ultimately taken back offline. So at that point, new sources were needed, which where Jamie was brought into the picture, and that led to the development of the McIntosh and Tucker well. And then in 2020, with the new arsenic regulation, the McIntosh treatment plant was constructed for compliance. And then most recently, Underwood's been involved in basically knocking down these well buildings and reconstructing them. The Bennett and Sewell wells, they're about 40 and 50 years old each. So a lot of great things have happened in the last 10 to 15 years, but there's still plenty to do. If you think about your water system, if you had to replace it today, it would be a $100 million asset. So, it's a very important asset to the town. And about 20 of that was invested in the last 10 to 15 years. So the town has transitioned from a supply deficit to a surplus, which is great news, which led to some unique opportunities in this master plan. We could think about things about like how to protect your sources and your assets, what's the best way to use them, and other things like that. So these are the 8 criteria that we're going to go through today. I won't spend much time on each, but I just want to give you the highlights. So quickly, this is an overview of the water system. In yellow, that's the water system service area. We can also see the 4 wells, the treatment plant, the storage tank on the top of the hill, and the Folsom booster pump station also on the top of the hill. So first, we're going to talk about water demands, how much water is produced each year. So we looked back 20 years, and you can see that it's pretty much a flat line, maybe even a slight decline. There's a little bit more to the story. So in 2009, 2010, a major leak in town was fixed, the Mills fire suppression system. So because it was leaking less water was used, but it wasn't really a change in demand. And then in 2020, COVID hit. People started working from home, using the toilets at home, and we saw a little uptick in water demand. And then most recently, the water treatment plant coming into service, which uses a little bit of water as part of its backwashing process.
What What is mode and add?
Average day demand, so if you take 365 days and divide it by how much water was used, and then max day demand, that's like the most water you use out of the year. Yeah, sorry. Yeah, feel free to stop me. So the next thing is non-revenue water. This is basically the subtract what you guys receive in revenue from from customers, and then how much you actually pump out of your facilities. That difference oftentimes in systems is due to leaks. Some systems have 17, I've seen as high as 35% non-revenue water. And in those cases, we would recommend, leak detection. But fortunately, your system, you can see in 2022 was 3%. We target 10, so that was a great number. We saw a little uptick in 2023. That was due to the treatment plant coming on, but Sean just crunched the numbers. In 2024, it's gone back down to, I think, 4%. So good shape. Oh.
10% is
Industry standard.
average? Or
Yeah, that's what we target. All right, some demographics. What to take away from here is the water services in town are mainly residential usage. The average usage is 117 gallons per day, and this serves a population in town of approximately 6,500 people. So not a lot of commercial or industrial water usage in town.
Can we go back?
Sure.
Just want to see the other categories.
Yep, so on the left, that is like residential, commercial, municipal, that's just like a category. And then on the right, that is the actual diameter of the water service to the facility. And 5/8 is the standard residential water service, which is why it's the biggest.
Okay.
Oh, did it again.
It's probably that button underneath. You
Yeah,
might be hitting
don't
it.
click this one. So future demands. This is a long-range planning document that we want to serve you for the next 20 years. So we met with the planning department, and we understand that they're developing a master plan in parallel with this. So they told us the areas in town that were going to change and potentially get denser due to zoning changes, more mixed use. So those are shown in the blue, the West Gate, the dark blue, the North Gate, and then the 108 corridor becoming more dense. So we assumed growth in those areas. So the blue's new service area, and the green is densifying existing service area. So we looked at population projections to calculate future demands, and we also looked at zoning projections. And as we saw with like COVID and fixing leaks, it's very hard to predict, future demands. But the key thing here is to be a little conservative, not overly conservative, so, you have to do new infrastructure. But what we landed on was about 25% growth in 20 years as a planning number, 100,000 gallons per day.
Can you back up a little bit? Thank you. When you're talking about the flow category and the ADD,
Yep.
Can you walk me through what these numbers represent?
Yep, do you want to start with the chart on the left?
Yeah, the population projection.
Yep, so residential, so what we did is we looked at census data, and we looked at how the town's population would increase from today to 20-year period. We basically increased the number of water usage based on the residential category by that same ratio. I forget exactly what the percentage of growth in town was. And then commercial, industrial, and the CCRC, those were numbers that we got from the planning department about known approved planning permits and the usage that those facilities would have, and we added that to the residential growth.
Forgive the forgive the elementariness of this question, but when I look at residential and it says 34,693,
Yep.
34,693 what? What am I looking at? What does that number
That's
represent?
additional daily usage for that category. So the residential water usage would increase by that much in the planning period.
In that many gallons
Gallons per day.
per day. Thank you.
For the entire town.
Thank you.
Yep.
Okay.
Sure.
And this is based on the current average that the different meters.
Today's residential usage increased based on the same ratio of population change. These are all approximate.
Yeah.
The water loss is going up, so that says to me you're laying more pipe. Is that part of this? Does this assume you're putting in more pipe?
So we actually believe the non-revenue water, if we go back,
You hit too far to the left, you gotta hit right in the middle.
Okay. I'm learning how to use this thing. Okay, thanks. So we actually think the non-revenue, or I'm just going to broadly put it as leaks. We actually think, so we did see an uptick from 3% to 7.5%, and I really just think that was due to working out the kinks of the new water treatment plant, and it's gone back down to 4%, which is, we expected it to be greater than the 3% because the treatment plant uses some water. When it cleans its filters, it has to go to waste. So we expected it to be higher than 3, but it's gone back down to a pretty normal and good level. So it's a tight system. There's not a lot of leaks. There's not a lot of wasted water.
But by forecasting that the non-revenue water is going to increase, what does that say?
I'm saying that your non-revenue water has gone back to 4%, which I think
Right.
is a pretty good
But in your
percent.
25-year projection,
Man,
Just
I'm just gonna stand
swipe
there.
it, yeah.
That would be great.
Swipe like an iPad. Nope, you tapped it first. There you go.
the other way.
There you go.
One more.
Okay.
On the second from the bottom, water loss,
Yeah.
it's going up. And I was just wondering, does this mean the system stays the way it is in terms of physical structure, or is this system being expanded?
This was just a placeholder assumption, I think, of 10% water loss, which again, I said 10% is a goal. So it's just a placeholder number that we assumed that some water was going to be lost. It wasn't really a projection. It was just an assumption.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I don't think it's
So then this assumes
critical.
we're not putting in new water pipe or anything.
We do have a whole section on distribution where I can talk about all the new water main coming up.
Okay.
If you don't mind. But in terms of expanding the water system, we did target this area and this area as potential areas for expansion, which would increase water usage, and that's covered in these new service areas right here. All right. So this is just a high-level graph of your supply. And we can see those two bars on the right, that's the McIntosh and Tucker well. Those are the newest sources that were brought online. And that was over a 200% increase in your water supply capacity, which was significant. And now with this full arsenal of 4 wells, again, now we can start thinking about what's the best way to use them, what's the cheapest ways to use them. All right, so these charts are the wells stacked and their capacity. These horizontal lines are those future demand projections. So you can see on the top here, that's the surplus capacity under this condition. These two conditions are how New Hampshire Department of Environmental Services evaluates your supply capacity. So normally it's your future max day with all your sources online, or your average day demand with 1 well offline. So these are basically your surplus water. Now, we're projecting that you don't need additional water in the planning period, but we have identified some things just so that it's in the report and documented. Artificial recharge is an option. This is where you take water from like the Lamprey River and you pump it into the aquifer to recharge it. This makes a lot of sense because the New Plains aquifer is only replenished by precipitation, so it's somewhat sensitive to drought. Jamie can talk a lot more about that. Also, relocation of the Bennett well to a different point in the aquifer. So again, not needed in the planning period. A really important thing here is how to protect your wells. Emergencies can happen. This photo is from November. We were doing a routine cleaning of the Bennett well, and the well casing cracked, and we had to replace it. And fortunately, we were able to replace it. So it just was a reality check on how valuable and precious these resources are and how, important they are as an asset to the town. The other thing is wellhead protection. That red area shows the boundary of the Bennett and Sewell aquifer. Jamie will talk more about that. I won't reiterate the conclusions. The only other thing that we will just quickly mention is, routine inspection of cleaning wells, and we also identified solar as a potential option to reduce water rates or operating costs. All right, interconnections, there's a lot going on regionally that we think you should be aware of. Newfields right now has very limited supply capacity, and they're blending their water to make water quality standards. Stratum has PFAS contamination. I think there's over 123 properties that are impacted with PFAS that all have point-of-use treatment systems, and they're looking for a supply partner. So I just want to mention that there's potential for regional connections here, and it could be an opportunity to sell water and gain revenue from some of your existing assets. And also Exeter, if it continued further on, which is a pretty long way, this pipe would be about $30 million to construct, could benefit as an emergency interconnection to supply water to either system. So build redundancy and resiliency of the water systems.
Can you say more about that? What do you mean when you say that?
Build redundancy and resiliency.
Yeah, just take me through what you were recommending here, what your supposition with the Exeter. Just walk me through that specific.
Yeah, so Exeter, there's basically, so if Newmarket had a catastrophe where they lost a major source and they needed more water, who are your neighbors that could potentially help you out? So you have Durham and you have Exeter. And all I'm identifying is there's a lot of synergy and interplay with other projects in the region in this area.
Okay.
If I may, there was actually almost a situation in a neighboring communities recently when, if you saw it in the news, the city of Dover lost millions of gallons of water because of a leak in an abandoned building. They have an interconnection agreement with the city of Somersworth that they would have supplied water in that situation.
Yeah.
Okay.
I actually did a presentation on that this morning, Worcester.
Was that the music store?
Yep.
Yeah, you're
Yeah, I
correct.
mean, how could they have pumped that much water into that music
Because the
store?
the music store is over the river, and it just went right in the river.
It was
Oh,
an
they-
8-inch fire service in the basement that just let go because of freezing, and it
Ah.
came out the windows, and then no one could hear it because of the dam right there.
Right.
Okay, I won't reiterate anything more on that, just want you all to be aware of what's going around. So water quality is great. Now that you have your new treatment plant, your arsenic is basically non-detect. This is the state standard. You're basically cranking out zeros, so that's great. Sodium and chloride, Jamie will touch on this. McIntosh and Tucker wells used to be connected to the ocean. That connection's been severed, and as expected, the salt levels have declined. We're well below recommended standards. Another thing you got to worry about with salt is corrosion control. And again, we looked at that, no issues with lead and copper in the system. So all good. Distribution. Here we can see that most of the system was built out in the 70s to 2020, which means that you have, generally speaking, mostly new ductile iron pipe that's got a long life, 75 years-ish. Then what we do is a risk assessment where we look at the pipes. If this pipe was to fail, how catastrophic would it be? How much of the system would go down? And we generate a risk category for each pipe. And we can see that like close to 90% of your pipe is low risk because it's new and there's redundancy, there's looping. Only a small portion of it is high risk and need for replacement, which is very small.
We were talking maybe a year or so ago about replacing all of Spring Street and part of Main Street and
Yep.
that loop around downtown.
The Hill Project, or
Yeah.
as I've been told. Yeah, that's in there.
Oh, it is?
You're like always a slide ahead of me. Which is good.
Okay, so we are gonna do that project at some point, you think, or we don't need to?
My thought is so some of that pipe isn't high risk pipe, but if you're going to
I said it is or is not?
is not.
Okay.
But if you're gonna do the hill project, we do recommend that you replace the water main at that time, because that's the optimal time to do it, when it'll be more economical, you don't have to do the road twice, so to speak. So those streets, are listed here in your capital improvements plan.
And just to remind, this is just water. Replacing the sewer lines, if the
That's a-
patient's open, you do both lines at the
Yeah.
same time
Yeah.
versus, yeah.
Well, was it sewer that we were worried about, or what? I thought it was the water line.
No, the sewer's clay.
Oh, it was the sewer,
The
okay.
sewer's clay,
Right.
yes.
Clay has a pretty long lifetime, right? Like millions of years.
Don't look at it or touch it.
Yeah.
So are these the recommendations that you're making? Can you walk us through this, please?
Yep, these lengths of feet and on these streets are the water mains that we recommend replacement over the next 20 years. You can
The
chip
next
away
20
with them
years.
as you like, but this is part of your capital improvements plan that we are
Okay.
putting in this report.
So that's 1,000 feet a year, let's say, roughly, right? So what does it cost to do 1,000 feet?
Well, it's actually, I've seen some interesting numbers lately. We opened.
Interesting good or interesting bad?
Actually, interesting good. I
Huh.
saw something that was like pre-COVID pricing. We just opened bids in Plastow for a Wilder water main project that was about a mile. And it was $220 a foot. That's the constructed cost, which was absurdly low. Like, I don't know if they just needed work. In Derry, New Hampshire, about 2 weeks ago, we opened bids on $15,000.
So that's like $500,000 a mile?
I need a calculator.
Yeah. Well, this is feet, I'm sorry, we're doing, so it's 200,000, so 1,000 feet would be like $200,000.
I think $500 a foot for your construction cost is
Oh,
somewhat of a good planning number, but then you have to add engineering and contingency on top of it. So
oh, okay, so
it's expensive.
So we need to do 20,000 over 20 years, right? So if we do 1,000 feet a year, that's like what, it sounds to me like it's what, like $750 a year?
I can tell you that the capital improvement plans we have is, I think, $33.6 million, and that includes some other things. I'm sorry, I just can't do math in my head. I'm an engineer, I should be able to, but I need a calculator.
But what I'm hearing is it is not an insignificant expense, and this is something that we should be thinking about for the long term.
Yeah, I think your hill project should be on your radar and it can be phased, so yeah.
Okay.
Also, if you're thinking about interconnects, when you do replace pipe, maybe have some thought that maybe this could be a potential supply connection to the south and not make it small. Just have that awareness when you're redoing the pipes. All right, storage. This was the biggest deficiency that we found. So I know you guys have done tremendous efforts to increase your water supply, and I think, Sean was telling me that you've known that you've needed more storage all the way back to the 80s, but you've just been working on more important things. So, this is a standard method to develop storage needs. Right now, you have 750,000 gallons of storage. And right now, we're saying that this is your deficit. This is how much you need. When we look to the future with the growth in town, that number goes up to 738. So you basically need double the storage you have today.
And that's surge capacity? Why do you need storage?
It's three things. Two are really easy to explain, one's a little harder. So the first one is emergency storage. The standard practice is to have one average day of demand in storage. Let's say a treatment plant goes down, you can survive for a day before you have to start saying, we're out of water.
Right.
So that's emergency storage. Fire flow, I don't know if you guys know about ISO fire flow tests, but it's like a needed fire flow to put out the fire in a commercial or residential building. So that is based on ISO fire flow tests, and that is this one.
And how is that calculated?
Um,
Why do we have 900,000?
I believe it's more of like an insurance thing, and I'm sorry, it's not really, it's
a flow rate per hour.
If there was a significant fire.
yeah,
So
Yeah.
we're in violation of that?
But there's no violations.
no violations.
Not a violation.
No
There's
It's like they would get a cheaper
Insurance.
insurance
People
rate
get-
if you can provide the
exactly.
fire flow at that building.
Right, okay, so we can't right now. Right,
No.
with 750.
No.
Okay.
And what's the condition of our existing storage?
I got a good thought on that.
Excellent.
Maybe we should save our questions till after we see all the
Just
slides.
to say one thing about the fire flow. For example, in communities that have, luckily our mills are now sprinkled, but that have old mill buildings and you see a mill fire, that usually wipes out a tank of water. Because it's just so much water being thrown into that. Our big concern in Newmarket for a large fire is Moody Point. Since it's on the point in the bay where winds pick up, and you have this time of year to June, which is traditionally dry and old leaves in the area, that will pick up, and if there was a fire there, that could pick up. And the buildings are so close, it'd be a difficult situation. That's one of the reasons why we also put a water line out to there.
Okay, so the existing storage tank, I believe it was, what, 80s, 78? 78. So Sean recoded it 29 years ago, and typically the coating on the tanks, exterior every 15 years, interior every 20. So the exterior coating on the steel tank has gone about twice as long as it should. Fortunately, we have, it's been looked at, and it's not in significant disarray. It's fine, but it's just in dire need of coating. The issue with that is, in order to fix the old tank, and you have to take it out of service completely, and you have to blast it, and there's a containment area around it. But you need a new storage tank to maintain pressure in town so that you can take the steel tank offline and fix it up before it gets too late and you lose that asset. So really the thing with the storage is you need to build a new tank sooner than later so that you can fix your old tank and have as much storage as you need without losing that old tank.
How did he do it 29 years ago?
It's actually a really interesting story.
Sean, you gotta stand up near the mics.
So what we did is we ran the old water treatment facility. We ran it 24/7. And we also ran the Bennett and Sewell well at the same time for 2 months. And when at nighttime, when the pressure started to rise, we'd go out and adjust the hydrant and let more water out. And then in the morning, when people started to use more water, we would close the hydrant so more water stayed in the system. And I worked a lot of hours. A lot of hours.
Yeah.
And we wasted a lot of water.
Yeah, clearly, yeah.
But yeah, you're like opening a hydrant to maintain pressure in town manually.
And then when the water plant just happened to shut off, you were running trying to get it going.
I would not recommend that.
Now, is that mark there, the blue mark, is that just a placeholder for a new tank, or is that placed on the map for that? I mean, is it thought to go into that space there?
There's been a prior study that we did in 2010. You really only have one hill in town that
Right.
is at the right elevation. So that is the ideal spot. And even from an infrastructure standpoint, it's nice to connect them together in the same look. Here, it's low cost to do that. And it has the right elevation. Obviously, you could put an elevated tank in town in other locations if you want, but they're about twice as much money.
Is there this is just throwing this out there, but if we were to, when we build a new tank, which clearly we will need to, could it be constructed to also function as could we think about a battery, an energy battery, an electric battery, basically, just storing, using excess electricity that we produce to pump water up the hill and
store it?
yeah, and to release it to recapture the energy.
So storage tanks somewhat work like that. So when let's say you run it through like a turbine. Keene does this, where they have their reservoirs up on the top of the hill, and then they run it through a turbine and they generate energy. The issue with this is when you take elevation and you turn it to energy, you lose pressure. So that has applications, but I don't think that applies to this situation.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm sorry,
So
we
he's
do have a lot of
asking,
slides,
like-
and
He's asking like the really intelligent question, and I'm gonna ask the other one. What are the two pretty dots in the middle?
Those are tanks.
There's
so
a-
that's your old steel tank,
Okay,
and
that's
that's
the
your
old-
proposed one.
Okay, so there's a little label down toward the bottom that says existing water storage tank. So what is that?
Because they water.
Oh, there's a line.
There's a really hard line to see that's black in paint.
Okay.
Sorry, I grabbed this from the old
Okay.
2010 report.
Thank
The water tank is a revenue generating machine, right, because we sell all those antennas. With a second tank, with a second tank.
There's only so many cell phone companies.
All right.
All right, so there's another layer to the storage, and this one's a little bit technical. So let's look at water pressure in town, and don't be alarmed by the Reddits. It's okay, no one's gonna die. So, state has guidance that water pressure should be normally between 35 and 80 psi. Based on your tank, water pressure is a little bit higher than that. So all the red means it's greater than 80, and it's somewhere between like 90 and 100, which really isn't alarming. The water system itself is can handle up to 250 psi, so the distribution system's fine. The little thing is like most interior plumbing now and fixtures prefer less than 80 psi, and that's easily achievable by installing a pressure reducing valve on the water service in the home. The other side of the coin is this blue area. So there's just a handful of services on the top of the hill that are less than 35 psi based on the water level in the tank. And that actually has a pretty significant consequence. It's a fairly easy fix, but you are not allowed to have pressure in your system less than 20 psi. That pressure in the water pipe keeps it sanitary so that groundwater can't come into the pipe. If you always have outward pressure, nothing can come in. So that's why you can't go less than 20. And unfortunately, your highest water service at the top of the hill is at elevation 190. So you can only bring your tank down 15 feet. So 75% of your tank right now is not usable, and you have a storage deficiency. So this was kind of the biggest thing that we found, and it's fixable.
So that's with our existing storage tank.
Yeah.
Okay.
And you also don't want to build another one just like it.
Okay. So with our existing storage tank, we already have a deficiency, and this one we can only use 25% of it.
Yeah. So
Okay.
increase that deficiency by a bit.
Sean, you're not retiring anytime soon? Yeah? Okay.
To be honest,
If
we
you are
see
legacy
this
planning,
is-
Sean,
It's comment.
Wasn't this somewhat due to like development towards the top of the hill way after the tank was built?
Yes, and our rules allow this from the get-go.
Yeah. So you have a water ordinance, and we can require different things to straighten this out. So one thing we can do is this blue area. This is the Folsom Booster Pump Station. We can expand the area that it serves to pick up those homes on the top of the hill, put them on a higher pressure zone so that the tank can be brought down lower and become more usable. There's other things. If you've seen Exeter's tank, it's an elevated tank, and you can see that the bottom's way up in the air. If you bring the bottom and bring all your storage higher up, it can become more usable. Anyways, we're going to look at those alternatives in basically a hydraulic grade line evaluation. And then once we do that, we can move forward with the tank design and also update the water ordinance to require those pressure reducing valves and establish the highest point you can connect a water service on the top. All right, operations. We looked at certified operators at 4 other communities in the Seacoast that had similar infrastructure to operate. We can see Newmarket there. And what we found was Newmarket did have significantly fewer certified or operator certifications than surrounding communities. And to further that, their employees are split 50-50 between wastewater and water. So basically you have 2 full-time staff to operate the entire water system, and this has become more complex than ever with the new water treatment plant.
I should have asked this before, but why don't we get to know who the A, B, and C are?
I was just doing that to be nice.
But I don't know if
Yeah,
A
who is
is
it?
Dover and B is Portsmouth and C is
Yeah,
Rochester.
I'm
Which
comfortable.
there's a big difference between community sizes and our size.
Stratum,
Okay.
no, not Stratum.
That's Stratum. Stratum doesn't have water.
Exeter,
Seabrook.
Seabrook.
Seabrook. Okay, both sides.
Farmington, Epping.
Yeah. Okay.
I think those are the three.
Okay.
small
Seabrook,
enough.
Farmington,
Yep.
and Epping. Okay.
I can double check that too.
It's fine.
No, you're right.
But historically, we've been hiring people, training them, and then other towns have been stealing them.
The bigger
Us
ones.
too.
The biggest
Us too.
one. Yeah.
It's everywhere.
Yeah.
It's a tough industry. It's really strapped.
Yeah.
All right, so we want Sean to be able to retire one day, so another part of this master plan, beyond just defining the entire water system, is to develop these standard operating procedures. These are documents that a new operator can look at and know what they're doing with some guidance. So we've established them for these key steps, and it'll, be a reference for new staff.
Are you saying those have been established? You're saying those need to be established?
We have not done those yet.
Okay, thank you.
That's
We
the
don't
last-
have standard operating procedures?
We do, but these are the ones that come in pieces.
Oh, okay.
So,
Okay.
and we're working on them now.
All right, operating costs. So we have the Sewell and Bennett well, and then we have the McIntosh treatment plant, which treats McIntosh and Tucker wells. And kind of a no-brainer, but because Sewell and Bennett don't need to remove anything, they're about half the price to operate as McIntosh treatment plant. So that's helpful information when you want to figure out, I have a surplus, which wells do I use more? What's the way to reduce operating costs of the water department? So with that, I'm going to hand it over to Jamie.
Which one is it forward? There you go. Okay. So I'm getting rid of the engineering and going to geology, hydrogeology. It's very exciting, to be honest with you. I don't know what happened.
I need to help you out.
Yeah.
Other way. There you
There
go.
you go.
Okay. So we were involved in developing the McIntosh and the Tucker wells. We did the exploration about 15 years ago, and as you know, those are the two wells that produce the most water for the town. And so now we're dealing with the 4 wells that you depend upon. Everything you have for water supply is your 4 wells. So we got to get to a strategy of how do you use those 4 wells in the best way. I'm going to take that from a hydrogeologic standpoint. So we're going to know where your groundwater recharge is to your production wells. And we have to establish protection areas around those wells, because you've spent, as he mentioned, $100 million in your assets. How much money have you spent on protecting the source that gives you the water to drink, to distribute? So that's one of the things we have to focus on. The other is we need to know the current precipitation levels. Everybody needs to know, are we in a moderate, severe, or extreme drought, right? We're not in a drought right now, but we have been in the past. What are the historic and current water levels in the aquifers? Let's get to number 5. We want to set pumping trigger levels in each well that says, at this point in each well, we're going to start worrying or concerned or change our direction in how we're going to use these wells. So that's kind of the focus of how do we take those wells and use them. So here's the Bennett and the Sewell wells you see in the north. You see the Tucker and the McIntosh. This is the recharge area essentially for those 2 wells. You can tell that there's a smaller area that contributes water. Every drop of water that the Bennett and the Sewell well get comes from within this area.
Now, is you said to establish a protection area, and part of that area is not in Newmarket,
Correct.
it's in Durham.
Yeah.
Is
That's gone.
we can still establish that
Yes,
it will be,
you can work with, cooperative agreements. with
Okay.
it. And this is the one that's least defined. This is an old designation, because Bennett and Sewell wells are old. They were put in the 50s.
Mhm.
These are this boundary, as you can see, is much larger, because you take out much more water. It's an area that we defined, and it's pretty accurate, so I wouldn't even think about changing or doing more investigation. This one definitely needs to be reassessed.
do you think that would be likely to be larger rather than?
This will likely be larger. So let me just show you a little bit.
So
This
can I
is
ask
the-
a question? So
Sure.
you know the Continental Divide, if rain falls here, it flows
Yeah, yeah,
east
yeah.
and it flows, is that what the
That's
black?
essentially what that is.
Yeah,
Right?
okay.
A drop of water within that boundary is what you're gonna ultimately get in your well. So that's why land uses make a difference. You have a contamination source that's there, ultimately gonna enter into your well. That's where we deal with PFAS, liquid dioxide, and all the VOCs that are problematic. I wanna show you this because as a colorblind person, I was told this is peach color of some sort. But that's the sand and gravel that is the aquifer that makes up. So you can see that majority of this is this one aquifer, the sand and gravel deposit aquifer, that you get your water. Now, I wanna just take a cross-section, just real quick. If I take a cross-section across this aquifer where your Bennett well is, you'll see one thing. This is ground level. This is the ground level all the way through. Bennett well, you see the bedrock surface. The bedrock surface is this blue-gray, right? The Bennett well is actually elevated at a higher location than what, like you can see the Sewell. The Sewell's taken advantage of all the gravel deposits that are there. The Bennett well is not. The Bennett well could be in the future, we're not talking about doing it tomorrow, but in 20 years, you would probably move the Bennett well over to another location to maximize your drawdown. But that's kind of a cool look at the cross-section of these two wells that you're taking groundwater from. Now, I want you to see, we're gonna talk about recharge. So we've got the watershed, or the drainage areas that we've identified. Now, how much water is gonna go in there? Well, these pyramids, each one of these is the average water that you get from precipitation. So it's about 45 inches a year. When you see the line that's below that, that's below average, right? So these are deficits, annual deficits, when the water the precipitation is less, and when you have water that's above that, we have a surplus of precipitation, right? Okay. We're gonna look at, just one quick thing, I want you to look at 2001, 2002. Look here as we go into 2015, 2016. If you remember, UNH ran out of water in 2015, 2016 during that drought. We have to know where we are in this rainfall thing. So, how does that affect us? We're going to establish, and we have established for Sean, so he can operate these wells in a better way, 4 categories of operation. A normal category, when you no worries, the wells are running, there's no issues. A watch concern, then a warning, and then a shutdown. So those are going to be his trigger levels in those wells where he's going to say, I've got to make some changes. Now, we put the trigger levels for each of the production wells, and these are monitoring wells away. I'm not going to talk about those, but there's the trigger levels for these particular wells. Now, this is a lot of material, but I want you to see this. This is green, normal. This is watch. This is warning. This is shut off. In 2002, you can see the Bennett well came down to the emergency shutdown. You essentially ran out of water in 2002. You did the same thing in 2015 and 2016. These wells come back on, these wells, McIntosh and Tucker, come on. Now you're able to operate these wells in a normal way, and the water levels come off, and they're above your concern level. That's what we're talking about. How do you get to that point? You got more flexibility than you did. But I wanted to show you that because this is how Sean's going to be able to use this in the future. Here's the Sewell production well. In 2002, you see that we're down to the shutdown period. 2015, we're back to the shutdown emergency. We get those 2 wells on, and we're in good shape. So, I want to show you, in the McIntosh and the Tucker, we have 3 domestic wells in that region that the state mandates that you monitor. Because if those water levels in those wells go to a certain level, you have to operate your wells at a different rate of production. So the state establishes the trigger levels for the monitoring wells, we establish the trigger levels for production wells. So let me just show you how this works. We have established the normal, watch, warning, emergency for each of those 2. I just want to show you one thing. This is when the McIntosh well went online in 2017. McIntosh is offline where you're building the treatment plant. McIntosh is back on, and finally Tucker comes on in 2023, right? Now, here's the McIntosh. You bring McIntosh online. Here is the normal. Here is the watch. And here's the warning. We're not even close. So McIntosh is operating in a great way, not having any impacts whatsoever. Same as, let's see if I can get that to go. Whoops, there we go. Where am I? There we go. Same as the Tucker. The Tucker well is operating very nicely. This is some erratic data, but you can see that we're staying above even our watch level in the Tucker well, which is fantastic. Here's the trigger levels for those 3 residential wells that I wanted to show you. Abbott, Downs, Hamel Farm, okay? Hamel Farm, we've got, these are stages that are set by DES. We're in good shape, stayed above it throughout the time period that this well's been operating, so good news for you. Go to the Abbott. We're staying well within the requirements for the state. And then we'll go to the Downs. Now here's the problem with the Downs. You can see that the Downs well operated way beyond stage 4 during a period of time. And we got a waiver for part of that time to be able to use it while we were getting everything operating. Now there's been a change in use too with the Downs and how they used it, the well, and we're back onto a good place where we're not being, there's no triggers.
Now, these were previously existing wells before.
These are residences that had wells that when we put in the wells in 2010, we were required by the state to monitor to make sure that we did not cause them adverse impact.
I see.
Just one quick thing, when we put the well on in McIntosh, this was a conate water, deep bedrock well, had a lot of sodium and chloride. Our predictions were that as time went on and we captured more rainfall to bring water into that recharge area, that we'd see conductivity, chloride, in this case, drop. So when we sampled chloride in 2010, we had a 250 milligrams per liter. Now in 2024, with the pumping that's been going on, we're down to 100. So we've reduced the sodium and chloride very substantially, which is what we were hopeful for. So what's the next steps for you guys? We got to use this long-term water level data that we show with these plots to manage the production from the 4 production wells. That's got to be the trigger. We got to collect and analyze conductivity data. We're doing it for the 2 bedrock wells. We think you should do it for Sewell and Bennett because of the salting of the roads to see if sodium and chloride is being impacting that water. We want to consider putting the Bennett well at a deeper location in 20 years, where I showed you in that cross-section. We want to reestablish artificial recharge for the Bennett well, which is what Devin mentioned before, that was being used when the treatment plant was in place. And then we want to reevaluate and put in a new WAPA for the Bennett sewer well. So that's it.
That's everything, guys. Basically, if you want a cheat sheet, this is it. Your water system's in good shape. We talked about storage, we talked about pressure, we talked about protecting your wells, and here are the opportunities. And that's everything.
I just want to kick off by saying, when I first got to Newmarket, we were not in this situation. We were in a severe lack of water, we put 2 wells on line since I've been here, and a lot of investment's been done by the town to get us where we are now. So just kudos to the Environmental Services Department for that, and the town.
Yeah. Councilor Martina.
So am I correct in saying that the priority is going to be the new water tower?
Yes,
Everything that you have?
yes, that would be
That's number 1.
that's number 1.
Okay.
Because
What are we looking at when?
I think the first step is doing the pressure zone, to look at the pressure zone first, to see how that's gonna work. We have done already some work on the water tower itself, but I think the pressure zone is the most important. I also think when we talk about replacing pipe, that we should put that off a little bit, because we just replaced a bunch of pipe, and we don't wanna replace pipe all at once. We wanna spread it out over time, because we don't wanna have to all of a sudden have the people in the future have to replace it all at once again.
If you're gonna put in a new tower, why 750? I mean, is it only a little bit more money to make it 950 or?
750 is the calculated amount that we should have. We don't wanna have such a large storage tank that we're having stale water, that it sits too long.
Okay.
You're running the water quality problems now.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, Sean. Work.
Actually, good. Security-wise, should we have 2 towers right next to each other? Like, if there was an issue,
Yeah,
Like an
I mean,
attack?
we could have one.
Okay, but that's what you're talking about.
Yeah, I
That's
mean,
okay.
cyber attacks have happened recently in water systems.
Or even an earthquake.
Exactly.
Like a bigger one than we have.
Right.
yeah.
I live up on the hill, but not
It's-
up on the
Well, I'm just saying that
Yeah.
having 2 systems so close to each other, you want redundancy. I'm just curious about that.
No, I think it's a great idea. You just pay for it.
Yeah.
Thank you. I was wondering in the opportunities section that if there is opportunity in, so if you the same kind of average usage for residences, for example, that we've experienced or observed over the last 20 years. I can't remember your frame of reference there, going forward for the next 20 years. And I'm wondering if there isn't opportunity in implementing or requiring water saving measures, especially in new builds, so as to bring that average down.
See, the water saving measures have brought it down because your new faucets, shower heads,
Right.
Toilets, that has brought it down.
That's what we're seeing.
And that's why you're seeing that decline.
Okay.
You're gonna only get to a certain point, and then you're not gonna be able to do anything. The other thing that's reduced water consumption is rates going up.
Well,
So we've noticed when we increase rates that the water use goes down, so.
Is that over the long term, or is it like a short-term reaction? Like, oh, my bill just went up, I'm gonna
No,
I'm gonna
it's a-
use less right this month, and then I forget about it.
It's been a long term.
Okay. Other questions? Councilor Martina?
Ballpark, what's the timeline in cost? Do we have right here?
I think the estimate
Cost
on,
for what?
for the water tower was
Water
around
tower.
$3 million right now.
That's for the new one,
Yeah.
Right.
and that doesn't include repairs of the old. That is, both those costs are in the master plan report. You'll see that in the CIP.
And the timeline is how long?
As soon as you can. Well, buy the land, do the pressure study, then.
It's gonna be like 5 years, the way I see
We
it.
don't already own the land?
We do not own the land. We do not, we've been starting on that piece. We do have a design of the water tower already. And that goes back to, I believe there was a positive bond vote maybe 20 years ago for that, but it was never got built. But it's gonna be 5 years. It's gonna take time.
It's a long time.
I mean, to be honest, 5 years is not a long time when you start a project to go beginning to end. When we're talking construction, it takes time. It does. And especially if we have to start looking at pressure zones and those kind of things, because we really need to look at the pressure zone and get that right. We wanna make sure we get it right the first time.
And to build one, a taller one, somewhere else in town, you say that's double the cost basically?
To do an elevated storage tank is gonna be double the cost, yes. Yes.
Roughly.
It also depends on funding, what's out there for available for grants and those kind of things.
Wouldn't count on too much.
You never know.
You never know.
You never know. Something could happen if I know we're getting short on time, something could happen where the state sees that we could supply another town water, and a part of the deal is they supply us some money to increase our storage, because we need it. So there's ways there's possibilities out there.
Okay. Other questions for Director Greg?
Is there besides this presentation, is there a report that we will receive that, because that's a lot of information to kind of digest and put into
It's about 300
context.
pages. Do you want the
Yeah.
whole thing?
Well,
I sent it to Steve.
I don't know if I want it all, but I'd rather have it all than.
I'm gonna tell you what we're gonna do, once we finalize the draft and take the draft off, it will be on our
Okay.
website
Okay.
for everybody to read.
Okay.
I wanna get the draft out of it first.
Yeah, that's fair.
Awesome. All right. Seeing no other questions, thank you, Director Greg. Thanks, gentlemen, appreciate the
And we
presentation.
can be in recess for a little bit.
And, yeah, we will recess for what, 7 minutes,
Yeah.
8 minutes?
5 minutes.
5 minutes? Oh, is that? Yes, 5 minutes. Okay, I even texted Patrick and said, I'm at town council.
Hey, we're all set for 5 minutes. Can you take us off?
Good evening, everyone. I'd like to call the Town Council regular session meeting to order for April 2, 2025. We will begin, as always, with the Pledge of Allegiance. And Councilor White, if you could lead us, please.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
For all. Thank you, Councilor White. Okay. Item 3 on our agenda is roll call, and all councilors appear to be present and accounted for. Item number 4 is public forum. Is there anyone from the public who wishes to speak this evening? Mr. Tappan now? Okay. Just waiting in case someone decides to show up. Seeing none, I will close public forum at 7:01. Item 5 on our agenda is to consider acceptance of minutes. And councilors, we have one set of minutes this evening, and that is the minutes for the March 19th, 2025 Town Council meeting. At this time, I would accept a motion to approve those.
I will move.
Thank you, Councilor White. Do I have a second?
I will second.
Thank you, Councilor Ward. Is there any discussion or corrections? Okay, seeing none, if you could call the roll, please.
Aye.
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 Aye. Okay, moving right along, we have, next item is to consider nominations, appointments, elections, and resignations, and we have 4-ish this evening. The first is the resignation of Shannon Culpepper from the Arts, Culture, Tourism Commission. And at this time, I would accept a motion to approve that resignation.
I will make the motion.
Thank you, Councilor Ward. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Councilor Dornblow. Any discussion? Okay, seeing none, if you could call the roll, please.
Aye.
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 Aye. Okay, and then we have two items regarding Doug Spiker, thank you. I'm so sorry, Mr. Spiker. The first is Mr. Spiker's resignation as an alternate member to the Arts, Culture, and Tourism Commission, and I would accept a motion to approve that resignation.
So moved.
Thank you, Councilor Glazebrook. Do I have a second?
I will second.
Thank you, Councilor Ward. Any discussion? I'm assuming the reason for this resignation is because Mr. Spiker would like to have like a full appointment as opposed to alternates. Okay. Seeing no other discussion, if you could call the roll, please.
Aye.
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 Aye. Okay. And our next appointment is for Doug Spiker to appointment to the Arts, Culture, and Tourism Commission with a term expiration of April 2028. And at this time, I would accept a motion to approve that appointment.
I will make the motion.
Thank you, Councilor Ward. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Councilor White. Any discussion on this appointment? Okay, Councilor Dornblow.
Sorry. Will this be filling the position that Ms. Culpepper is vacating? So,
Yes.
yes,
Please.
okay. All right, thank you.
Excellent. I support it. He's been serving as an alternate, and I think it's great that he wants to serve in this capacity, and appreciate it a great deal. Seeing no other discussion, if you could call the roll, please.
Aye.
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 Aye. Okay. And our last appointment today is actually a reappointment, and it is the reappointment of Peter Nelson as Stratford Regional Planning Commissioner with a term expiration of March 1, 2029. At this time, I would accept a motion to approve that reappointment.
So moved.
Thank you, Councilor Dornblow.
And I will second.
Thank you, Councilor Ward. Any discussion on this reappointment? Okay. I have a question, it might be for you, Town Manager. One of the documents is a just notification that says, because we're a town of X size, we have X number of, appointees. And then that was accompanied by a blank appointment form, but no information with Mr. Nelson. And so what I'm curious about is procedurally, we just approve this reappointment and then somebody else will fill out this form?
We filled out the form after.
Okay, that is what I needed to know. Awesome. Any discussion or, any other discussion or comments? Counselor Drumblett?
Just presuming that Mr. Nelson intends to be reappointed.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, seeing none, if you could call the roll, please.
Aye.
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 Aye. Okay, thank you very much. And the next item on our agenda is the report of the town manager, and so I will turn it over to you, sir.
Thank you, Madam Chair. First, not in my written report, today we had a meeting, the fire chief, police chief, and I met with representatives from CSX Transportation, which runs the railroad. CSX will be temporarily closing 2 railroad crossings in Newmarket for essential maintenance beginning on April 15th. The work, which includes replacing cross-ties, resurface, grade crossings, will affect Exeter Street, Route 108, from April 15th through April 18th, and Elm Street from April 19th to the 21st. That means those roads will be shut down for those 3 days. So we're talking 108 will be shut down for 3 days.
From where to where?
Right out here.
Yeah.
Where the railroad
Right
crosses
by the gas station.
108, that will be closed for 3 days. They will be putting up detour signs to encourage those non-local traffic to go out to 125 and up. We also have the same situation that Ash Swamp Road is closed because the bridge is being replaced, and New Road is on 1 lane because of the bridge being damaged.
Yes.
So just getting the public out there that there's going to be traffic issues in the next couple of weeks. From the 15th to the 21st, 19th to the 21st, Elm Street should be no issue. But the big one is 108. And they're already getting they met with us. They're getting notifications out. We're going to do the same and try to work to get that going.
Do we know where the,
Counselor White?
I'm sorry, do we know where the rerouting of 108 will be on town end?
Going this way, you're going to go up South Main, out to 125.
Right. but
Yeah.
I'm saying, so you're going out,
They're bringing you from state route to state route. That's because they don't want big trucks to go through residential areas.
yeah, okay.
And we don't want to advertise all the side roads for,
Because I'm thinking New Road
Oh.
Yeah.
won't stand up to.
that's what we're concerned about as well.
Counselor Ward and then Counselor Dunn.
So it was the crossing at 108, and what was the other one?
Elm Street.
Elm Street.
That's 19 to 21.
Then this could move due to weather. They're replacing, just so, the size of the scope of this project, they're replacing the ties from Plastow to Brunswick, Maine. So it's a big project for them. It's the largest in their system right now, and CSX is a large system.
Counselor Drumblett.
Since a lot of the traffic that comes down 108 comes obviously from out of town, does the communication include towns, Durham and North, so that there will be awareness and there will be rerouting before you leave Durham, so that you don't.
I don't know about that.
Okay.
DOT, New Hampshire DOT is aware of it. I'm not sure what the messaging package is on their end. CSX is sending out maps and press releases to the media to get the information out. We're going to send it out to residents in Newmarket.
The reason I'm asking is because rerouting up 152 means going past the school, which obviously carries tons of issues right there, and then Ashwamp being closed, that's a long reroute if you're, so to know that before you leave Durham or before you get into 108 in the first place might be really, really
We have sent out press releases from us. We can only do so much before.
Yeah.
They can't hold everybody's hand when it comes to notifying them.
That's sure, yeah. Well, that's going to be an interesting few
It
days.
will be.
Yeah.
And what's the window?
The
again?
15th to the 21st of April.
Okay. All right.
Fire and rescue, what are they gonna go up
New road. It's an emergency. We have emergency ways to get through. The high school, that's not a public road, but it's an emergency route, so that's our connection. We've always had that in case there was a train derailment. So we know what to do.
Okay.
Okay, the next item I'm gonna report, I would suggest holding off on discussions, because my understanding there may be a motion to suspend the rules on a resolution later on that's been introduced, so probably that's better time to have the big discussion, but I just want to give you an update on what's going on. This is regards to Senate Bill 297, which is regulating risk pools in the state of New Hampshire. To roll it back, what risk pools are in New Hampshire are municipalities have an extremely difficult time to go on the public market to get insurance products. I always say the simplest reason to say that, private insurance companies do not like to insure businesses that people run into buildings on fire and get shot at by guns. So what came to be is that in the 80s, when that market was collapsing, the municipalities pulled their money together and created what we call risk pools, which is a quasi-insurance product to cover municipalities. We have it for liability insurance, health insurance, you can get it for workers' compensation insurance. On March 20th, the New Hampshire State Senate unanimously approved Senate Bill 297, which adds regulations to the risk pools that municipalities participate in across the state. We had to be created by the state entity, and it's called 5B. I don't want to get in the weeds, but so they can regulate us. Cities, towns, counties, and school districts form risk pools, as I said, to reduce insurance costs and limit individual exposure. Senate Bill 297 is bad for communities because it imposes new financial burdens on municipalities and alters the terms of the participation of risk pools, not by our membership, but by the state. First, it is going to be an increased cost to members. The bill is going to require pools to collect additional funds from municipalities through special assessments if reserves drop below a statutory threshold or if the pool was considered insolvent. That can happen in the middle of a budget year. We may not have budgeted for it, but we're going to have to collect the funds. We're going to have to send money in. There'll be new mandates to participate in the health pool. We'll have to be required to establish a non-lapsing reserve fund, a capital reserve fund, called the Healthcare Stabilization Fund. Fund would cover assessments triggered by insufficient reserves or insolvency within the pool. So they're automatically going to impact the tax rate by putting X amount of money into a capital reserve fund that we can't touch for anything unless something goes wrong with the health insurance. Municipalities, as I said, are going to contribute 1% of the annual health contributions to the reserve fund until it reaches 4%. If the fund is used to cover an assessment, it must be replenished annually at the same rate. And as we call it, it's a state mandate to appropriate more funding than is currently required by health pool membership. We're still unclear with enforcement issues. The bill states a municipality cannot participate in a health pool without a reserve fund. It's unclear what happens if a legislative body fails to appropriate the required amount, especially since membership renewals typically occur before municipal budgets and finalized at an annual meeting. If all of a sudden at deliberative session they zeroed out the line, we don't know where we would get the money. So we don't know how they would enforce it. And the bill would also require municipalities to acknowledge in writing that they're ultimately responsible for any losses incurred during the participation in a pool. It holds municipalities accountable for any losses arising during the previous year, even if they terminate coverage. So if you leave the group, even though they have other insurance products that cover them, and there's a loss, you're going to have to pay the price. So it doesn't make sense there either. The Secretary of State, who is supporting this bill as the entity that regulates risk pools, emphasized that member group has always been ultimately responsible for losses in the event of a risk pool insolvency, which is why Senate Bill 297 is being introduced to strengthen the financial safeguards and reduce risk insolvency. Right now, the health trust, who we participate in, already collects a 5.3% replenishment fee. And projections show that assuming claims align with projections, Senate Bill 297 will result in lower overall contributions from members in fiscal year 27 to 30. Even with the new reserve requirements, we disagree. The bill's creation of a healthcare stabilization fund is intended to enhance local financial control and preparedness for unpredictable assessments, with the likelihood of such assessments being projected at under 5% annually once reserves stabilize. The legislation also includes a 4-year review process for stakeholder input and maintains that public risk pools should not be regulated like commercial insurers do due to their unique structure and purpose. We can tell you that one of the number one things that we're asking is, why is the Secretary of State looking at it? Why is the Department of Insurance looking at an insurance product? Finally, they have concerns about $95 million reserve shortfall. Are dismissed as overstated, since the bill's mechanism combined with the new stabilization fund would raise total reserves from 22 to 22%, exceeding the cited benchmark. One thing, I was on the board of the Health Trust 10, 15 years ago. The same Secretary of State at the time, well, not same Secretary, same office at the time, stated that we had too much money in our reserves and we had to turn it back, and regulated us to change it. There's a lot of politics involved in this, but they claimed at that time we had too much reserves and we were holding too much. After Senate Bill 297 was approved by the Senate, the Health Trust Board, who we get our insurance, came out and of course opposed the bill, arguing that it's based on false assertions from the Secretary of State about their financial status. Health Trust reported a $10 million gain for fiscal year 24 and expects further gains in 25. They fully funded reserves and have a strong cash flow. The board is following an approved plan to rebuild reserves after returning $57 million due to the pandemic. So that's all the payouts they had to make during the pandemic. They believe this plan is sufficient and consider opposing claims of that to be irresponsible. The Health Trust highlights its transparency through audited financials and actuarial data, and questions the intentions behind Senate Bill 297. Senate Bill 297 would fundamentally undermine risk pooling in New Hampshire, imposing flawed and overly rigid requirements without the actuarial systems needed to support them. The Health Trust Board stressed that the bill threatens the viability of pooled risk health programs, and if passed in its current form, would force Health Trust to cease operations in mid-2026. So that means we would not have an insurance product for our employees in July of 2026. While committed to fully fulfilling obligations, returning any surplus to members, the board of the Health Trust underscores that the decision is not financial, but the response to what they describe as dangerously flawed legislation. Health Trust supports reasonable regulation, but urges the revisions to Senate Bill 297, emphasizing the critical role risk pools play in providing affordable, effective health coverage. Since the announcement of the potential closure of our healthcare provider, I've been working with our legislative delegation, the municipal association, and other municipalities to work on defeating this bill and ensuring we have healthcare for our employees. So another part of that as well is there's other healthcare pools. There's something called school care, which is mainly schools, and something called the New Hampshire Interlocal Trust. One of the big differences between Health Trust and those two is Health Trust does not deny membership to any municipality or political subdivision of the state. The other two can look at municipalities and say, yeah, we don't want to cover you. So you don't have insurance. So if Health Trust goes away and the other two stay, we still may not have coverage, because they could say, yeah, we're not going to accept you. So our size community, we're okay. It's the smaller towns and the communities that have a lot of claims. As I said, I've been on the phone a lot with other town managers. I talked to Senator Perkins Quokka the day after the bill passed. She indicated that it's going to be going to the House Commerce Committee sometime when what they call, blanking on the word, when they switch bills from one house to the other. Crossover. Thank you. I even did the cross. And some of the items that they're going to look for is, one, move regulations of the pools in the future from the Secretary of State's office to the Department of Insurance, as well as changing the wording for this. This could be pretty catastrophic to municipalities. So I know Councilor Jordan asked me to help write a resolution that's on the agenda for tonight. So just wanted that was already in my report, so I didn't want to take it out.
Okay. And we'll be discussing it.
You
when
will
we
be.
discuss the resolution. Okay.
The next is our annual roadside cleanup. Will be on April 27th. People should show up to the library and get free supplies. Last year, we had over 50 volunteers and picked up 106 bags of trash. And just a reminder that, as I mentioned earlier, starting Monday, April 7th, Ash Swamp Road will be closed to through traffic between New Hampshire Route 108 and Grant Road. This closure is necessary for the bridge rehabilitation project in the area of Price's Sunnycrest Garage. And that is all I have tonight.
Okay. Questions or discussion for the town manager, understanding that we're going to discuss discuss SB 287 this evening, or 297 this evening. Counselor White.
Having said what you said, Madam Chair, SB 297, who was the sponsor of the bill, do we know?
I can find out by the time we get to the next part.
Senator Carson.
Was the main, right?
Carson? And I would love to know what type of reasoning and/or thought process was used to determine this is the optimum way for municipalities to go.
I wouldn't be misspeaking by saying it was railroaded in. It was introduced very quickly, and it was brought to hearing very quickly. And I understand Senator Carson also is the Senate president, so she has that authority to put those bills through. It came from the Secretary of State's office. We know the individual where it came from, and that individual who oversees that had issues with the health trust in years past, saying we had too much reserves, and that I can also say that individual one time served on the health trust board. So there's politics involved in it as well.
I'm thinking of two other words, but I'll let
I
them
know. I did the same.
Only for the purposes of making sure that we can continue to do all the other things. We are going to get to this one.
Yep.
And it's on, it's on the agenda for today. So if we could hold further kind of discussion or questions about that too, then it'll just keep things cleaner. Are there any other discussions about anything else on the town manager's report? Okay, Councilor Drumble.
It's not really a discussion, it's just I realize that the concern about road closures is, because I just remembered that the Lee Hook Bridge is closed. We'll be closing Ash Swamp. So when CSX, hearing the train close, I'm just a little worried that this is going to get pretty chaotic. Not that we can do a heck of a lot. I just want to make sure that we all do as much as we can to let people know that this is going to happen and nobody gets caught unawares or can say, I did not know about this.
The perfect storm we had in the past for this was they closed the rail crossing, I want to say a day or two, 4 or 5 years ago, when we also had the reconstruction of 108 between Durham and Newmarket, where you would have 45-minute backups.
Yeah.
And we got we publicized much more than the state did, and put out notices that void 108 and showed them go around, because we knew there was going to be backups. So we're going with that. Tell everybody avoid it as much as possible. It's already on the website. When it gets closer, we're going to have the banner saying.
Does the website have a suggested route?
We are getting that now.
Yeah. Okay. Super.
And we can, I'm sure the team's already on it, but like a social media campaign to lots
Yep.
and lots of posts on what the hell and the community
Starting out
chat
this
and
week,
whatever.
yeah.
Okay, great.
Thank you.
Any other questions or discussions for the town manager? Okay, then with that, we will move on to committee reports. Are there any committee reports this evening? Oh, Councilor Lamatina.
So the Energy Environment Committee met, and we met with a couple of representatives from Casella and the town DPW director. The question that we asked was, how is Newmarket doing with recycling right now, and what can we do better? Casella, Newmarket is actually doing pretty good. Casella stated that of the tonnage that they pick up, curbside and at the transfer station, 40% of the tonnage that they pick up is in the recycling bins. And of that 40%, it gets mixed with other communities, but when it gets mixed with the other communities, they can't really tell how much is actually coming from Newmarket, but they can tell of that recycled stuff, 80% of it is recyclable. There's only 20% of the recycled material that is that they can't recycle, it's contaminated or whatever. So what can we do better? One of the things we're gonna do is a education campaign. Reuse, recycle,
Reduce.
Reduce.
something about recycling. So that's what I got there.
Can I ask a question?
Oh,
Yep.
yes, Councilor
Thank you.
Dunbar.
So Casella said that 80% is recyclable. How much of that is actually recycled? Were they able to say
So
that?
he said, of the tonnage that goes into the recycling process, 80% of that is actually recyclable, cardboard, plastics. Only 20% is
But I see what
But
you're saying.
they're not following it downstream to see what actually happens to it.
Okay.
All apply. I did have something that I was supposed to bring and give to everybody. I forgot to bring it. But all the plastic stays within the United States. They do ship out the cardboard and stuff. That's what you're asking?
Well, I was wondering, there's a difference between something being recyclable and actually being recycled, right? I mean, even when you buy a product and it says it's, it's recyclable, is it going to be recycled?
Yeah.
Is a question of what happens downstream or wherever this goes. So I was just wondering if they
There were some statistics on that, like
Yeah.
the cardboard does get recycled X number of times, and,
Yeah,
and some of the
okay.
plastic gets recycled.
if you have that, I would be interested in seeing it.
I can get you that.
Thank you.
Councilor Lamattina, what are the, just out of curiosity, what are the kinds of things right now that are the most recyclable? So if I was able to choose any container for anything, what would be some of the best materials for recyclability and some of the worst?
Cardboard, aluminum cans, and milk bottles, or the plastic that is in milk bottles.
Okay.
Not all plastic is great,
Okay.
but definitely like the milk bottle type plastics.
Cardboard, aluminum cans or aluminum bottles,
Mhm.
and milk jug type plastics.
Correct.
Okay, and what are some of the worst?
Contaminated paper, I believe.
Okay.
Pizza
wet
boxes
paper.
is the number one.
But those can be composted
Composted.
composted at Mr. Fox's thing at the transfer station.
Yeah.
So.
And definitely compost, yeah, like you said, could be done better. Another thing that they mentioned was don't squish your cans and don't squish your bottles. It's actually better for them when they're picking out the recycling if the cans are not crushed.
So they can be rinsed better.
They have like conveyor belts and air hits it. It's all done with lasers and cameras and whatever, and air shoots it into the different materials into the different buckets. And so if they're not crushed, it's easier for the air to knock them out.
Okay. Yes.
Where are we with glass?
You did talk about glass, but I don't recall saying that.
'Cause I know-
it was really great about glass.
Yeah.
There are a lot of communities that are pulling glass out of recycling because it does degrade. It just instead of recycling it, either bring it to put it into different bins that we do use it. I know communities use it as a base for roads. They turn it back into sand, or they just let it go into the stream because it will break down. So I just wasn't sure if they brought that one up.
Did you talk about glass a little bit, but
Yeah.
no.
Other questions for Councilor Lamattina? I had one. Since you were talking to Casella, I know that one of the things that's coming up is, the shift to the, I don't know what it's called, the shift, I don't know, what is it called?
The way they pick up the
Yeah,
trash
yeah,
instead of the
yeah.
bags, the automated.
Yeah, the thing. What kind of, what are the implications of the thing for recycling?
Okay. So, according to the DPW director, that's coming sooner or later.
Yeah.
At some point in time, they're gonna do that. There'll be one person driving the truck, and that truck will pick up a big, pail, whatever, or barrel that people
Okay.
put out. Right now, one of the main reasons why a lot of the 40% of our stuff goes into the recycling bills is because the people don't put it in the plastic bags that they pay for. Okay, it's easy to stick it into the recycling. And so going that route with the automated pickup, they have to work out something, to keep people doing the recycling part. Okay, right now because of the pay for the bags they do that. Dover is looking at doing that, switching to the automated pickup, and I guess Rick is kind of looking to Dover to see what Dover is going to do, so that we can kind of copy them. Dover has a
That's our
very high-
conversation, yeah.
Okay, okay,
Dover has almost a 50% right now recycling rate.
okay. All right, thank you. Okay, other questions for Councilor Lamatina? Okay, other committee reports this evening? Okay, light committee term. All right, so now we will move on to resolutions and ordinances in the second reading. You guys, this evening there are three. The first resolution is Resolution 2024-2025-35, and that is computer system upgrades. And at this time, I would accept a motion to approve this resolution.
I will make the motion.
Thank you, Councilor Ward. Do I have a second?
Second.
Oh, thank goodness. Councilor Lamatina. I was a little worried about that. Okay, and so at this time, who's going to speak to this one? Town manager?
Is it the, yeah,
Finance director? All right.
Okay.
Don't look so excited.
Yes. Sorry. So the purpose of this is really to do a bulk purchase of systems, 6, and it's the main reason is for security. We've run into some issues where with these systems that they can't be upgraded to Windows 11, and there is a pretty major security problem with Windows 10 that's been identified. We want to get rid of it as soon as possible.
Okay.
So that's what's driving this.
Okay. Questions for the finance director or discussion? Councilor Blackstone.
I was just curious if you had looked up this thing at UNH on the cybersecurity stuff that Jane Ford had told me about.
Yeah, so we're already involved with another group we're actually involved with a couple of groups, both driven by the state and Primex. So we work with Primex, which is our one of the insurance groups that we were talking about earlier. And they work with both the state, CIO and CISO, as well as NIST, which is a national,
acronyms, what they, all of them mean.
national organization.
CIO's Chief
That's
Information.
Chief Information Security Officer, right? Which
Used to be
the
National
group
Bureau
you're
of Standards.
talking about,
Yeah.
they do the same thing.
Yeah.
So
Okay, so
we're
it's a competing organization kind of thing.
kind of, although I think they probably collaborate with the same group, but they're not part of that.
Right.
The Primex team that we're involved with. So, but we've been involved with them since they got started, back just before the pandemic. So,
All right.
yeah, so it was a good idea. It wasn't that, it was, we're
No, I just was
we're
curious.
head first into this.
Yeah.
And have been for a bit.
Okay. Other questions for the finance director? Okay. Thank you very much. Any discussion on this resolution? Okay. Seeing none, if you could call the roll, please.
Council Wastewater.
Aye.
Council Lamatina.
Aye.
Council Calabria.
Aye.
Council White.
Aye.
Council Blackstone.
Aye.
Council Ward.
Aye.
Council Conley.
Aye.
Motion passes 7-0.
Okay. Our next resolution in the second reading this evening is Resolution 2024-2025-37. Guessing it has something to do with our work session this evening, and that is the Wastewater System Asset Management Plan. This time, I will turn it over to you, sir.
This is wastewater.
This is
Yeah,
wastewater.
yeah.
Need a motion in a second.
This time I would accept a motion to approve this resolution.
So moved.
And I will second.
Thank you, Councilor Dornbluth. Thank you, Councilor Ward. And I will turn it over to you, sir.
So on the water side, we do have an asset management plan. On the wastewater side, we do not. And I've actually received $30,000 from the state to do this project. However, it's not enough, so we'd be putting in $68,750 out of capital reserves, wastewater capital reserves. What we're looking to do here is to look at our assets and how we manage those assets, so we can squeeze every ounce of life out of each asset and make decisions based on data-driven, and to make sure that we're have things on the shelf that should be on the shelf when they should be on the shelf. So we're not sitting on a bunch of inventory for a long time. So it's a really data-driven plan, and it really looks at all the assets for the wastewater system, which the wastewater system has about $125 million worth of assets. So we're going to really look at them critically and come up with a plan on how we manage those assets.
Okay. Any questions for the director? Okay. Any discussion on the resolution? Oh, Councilor Lamatina.
As we saw with the water treatment, the water stuff, I don't know, Newmarket is just in a great spot compared to other towns around us. I know Stratham has issues with water, Newfields has issues with water, Epping has issues with storage. I think a great deal of commendation goes to Sean for managing our
Here,
water
here.
systems here.
Agreed.
And I would say, approve this.
Okay. Any other discussion on this resolution? I'll only say that, yeah, I'm also in favor of it. I think it's using funds that are already in the capital reserve fund, and that's its purpose. And I think this, forward planning and data-driven approaches has served us well under your stewardship, sir, and certainly expect that it will continue to do so. So I'm in favor. Okay. Any other comments or discussion? Okay, seeing none, if you could call the roll, please.
Council Glazebrook?
Aye.
Council Lamatina?
Aye.
Council Dornbrook?
Aye.
Council White?
Aye.
Council Blackstone?
Aye.
Council Ward?
Aye.
Council Conlon?
Aye.
Motion passes 7-0.
Okay. So getting a little confusing. So this one, the next resolution in second reading this evening is Resolution 2024-2025-38, and that is the Wastewater System Master Plan. And at this time, I would accept a motion to approve this resolution.
I will make the motion.
Thank you, Councilor Ward. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Councilor Lamatina. Okay. And at this time, I will turn it over to you once again.
Okay, as everyone knows, we did tonight, we just completed the water master plan. Now I'm looking to do the wastewater master plan, and much like the water, this is a very hard look at the wastewater system, all its needs, problems that we have. I do know there's a lot of problems, such as we want to look at sludge and how we dispose of sludge and what that looks like, as well as look at the collection system, which we have a lot of infrastructure out there that is in need of help. And that's the 5 pumping stations that are, some haven't been touched for years. So we need to look at our system hard and then evaluate it and then systematically look at how we're going to attack those problems.
Okay. Questions regarding the wastewater master plan? My only question would be, what is the difference between the asset management plan and the wastewater master plan, and why wouldn't these both be part of just the same thing?
Okay, normally I would have lumped them together, but because of funding, the master plan, I actually could get $100,000, and I'm working on that to reimburse it. So I submitted one, and I got $30,000, and now I'm submitting the other one. I've actually submitted it already to the state, and they said it looks good. So I'm pursuing a grant for this one, and that's why I'm having separate. However, they are two separate things.
Okay.
One could be used to help develop the other, but the asset management plan is really just looking at how you manage the assets and how you evaluate your assets and how you, when you purchase and when you replace, where the master plan is more for the whole picture of the whole system and how you're going to progress forward over the next 20-year period.
I appreciate that clarity. Thank you. Councilor Dornblatt.
So one, is it fair to say one is more related to operations and the other one is more of a expansion, replacement kind of?
Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay. Other questions for the director? Any discussion on this, this resolution? Okay, Okay, I'll say that as with the others, I'm in favor of it. I think that the forward-looking work that we're doing will serve us well. I think it's an important work, and as always, I appreciate your efforts to care for the Newmarket's purse, because caring for that also cares for the purse of its citizens, and so we appreciate your efforts to look for grants and any other thing to sort of offset these expenses.
Thank you.
Any other comments? Okay, seeing none, if you could call the roll, please.
Council Glazebrook?
Aye.
Council Lamatina?
Aye.
Council Dornbrook?
Aye.
Council White?
Aye.
Council Blackstone?
Aye.
Council Ward?
Aye.
Council Conley?
Aye.
Motion passes 7-0.
Okay. And then, item number 11, this is resolutions and ordinances in the first reading, and this evening there is one. And that is Resolution 2024-2025-39. This is a resolution opposing New Hampshire State Senate Bill 297, an act relative to pooled risk management programs. Whereas the town is a participating member of the New Hampshire Health Trust, a municipal risk pool which serves as a mechanism for managing risk, ensuring financial stability, and providing affordable coverage options for municipalities and public entities across New Hampshire. And whereas New Hampshire State Senate Bill 297 would impose significant and unrealistic financial and administrative burdens on risk pools and their members, including municipals like the town, and whereas SB 297 imposes vague and subjective standards that could trigger unexpected mid-year assessments, disrupt municipal budgeting, and threaten long-term financial planning, and whereas SB 297 introduces new oversight and administrative costs, further straining local budgets, and whereas the bill mandates new contingency reserve requirements that could cause sudden and significant rate increases, creating volatility and undermining the predictability that towns and cities require for responsible fiscal planning. And whereas these provisions taken together pose a serious threat to the financial sustainability, predictability, and effectiveness of municipal risk pools, potentially resulting in higher costs, legal uncertainty, and reduced service capacity for municipalities and other public entities across the state. And whereas the New Hampshire Health Trust has indicated that it would cease to operate if this legislation is approved, putting municipal employees' health care in jeopardy and potentially costing taxpayers significantly in the future. Now therefore be it resolved by the Newmarket Town Council that the Town Council hereby expresses its strong opposition to New Hampshire Senate Bill 297, and be it further resolved that the Town Council, urges the New Hampshire Legislature to reject Senate Bill 297 and instead work collaboratively with municipalities and risk pool administrators to support financially sound and administratively feasible approaches to oversight and risk management, sponsored by Councilor Dornbluth, first reading April 2, 2025.
Point of privilege, Madam Chair.
Councilor Dornbluth.
In the interest of timeliness, I would like to introduce a motion to that we consider suspending the rules for this resolution to be able to be voted on today as well.
Okay, there's a motion on the table to suspend the rules and vote on this resolution today. Do we have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Councilor White. Discussion on this resolution?
Suspending
No?
the rules.
Oh, I'm sorry. Any discussion on whether to suspend the rules? Thank you. No? If you could call the roll, please.
Council Glazebrook?
Aye.
Council Lamatina?
Aye.
Council Dornbrook?
Aye.
Council White?
Aye.
Council Blackstone?
Aye.
Council Ward?
Aye.
Council Conley?
Aye.
Motion passes 7-0.
Okay, so now we have suspended the rules. At this time, I would accept a motion to approve Resolution 2024-2025-39, opposing State Senate Bill 297, an act relative to pooled risk management programs.
I will make the motion.
Thank you, Councilor Ward. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Councilor Lamatina. Okay, we talked about this a little bit. Now's the opportunity to ask further questions or get additional clarification. Are there any other questions or discussions on this particular resolution? Councilor Ward, and then we'll go to Councilor Blackstone.
Yeah. It's simply, in my opinion, if something is working, which sometimes is pretty rare in government, but if something is working, why change it? And also, I do not like the idea that there doesn't seem to be much thought into alternatives placed if this, and if things happen as health trusts say and they close down, I'm concerned that there would not be any real alternatives, which leaves our public works people, our firefighters, our police officers, in a bad place, and it costs our taxpayers more to, insure them for their future. So given that this bill doesn't really give us really good or clear alternatives, should health trust go down, I'm for us opposing it. There.
Thank you, Councilor Wood. Councilor Blackstone.
So my concern or my question is, what problem does this solve? I mean, why was this, brought forward? What was the problem that this is solving?
The Secretary of State's office believes that that two pools are, in their words, not mine, are close to insolvency. That would be the Health Trust as well as the New Hampshire Interlocal Government Trust. The reason insolvency is overstating it greatly. Yes, their reserves are down, but that was, as we mentioned earlier, because they had to spend $54 million during the pandemic to pay out for claims, and they're rebuilding that reserves now. As I said previously as well, the Secretary of State's office 10 years ago thought the Health Trust was holding too much in reserves, which was actuarial. Their actuaries wanted them to hold, and made the Health Trust turn money back over after a hearing in front of an independent judge.
So kind of an alarm bell went off that the health trust is not solvent.
That's what the Secretary of State's office believes. The Health Trust's own actuarial says they're solvent. They have the reserves. They're rebuilding the reserves, and they have the cash to do that as well.
Okay. Councilor Wood.
Sounds to me like the risk pool did what it was supposed to during COVID, which was one of the biggest health crises ever, and was able to keep going. So, I don't see. So yeah, it sounds like it worked the way it was supposed to. Got money to the people who needed it during crisis, and now they're rebuilding it. So I don't see. I agree with Councilor Blackstone. I don't see a reason for Senate Bill 297.
Other questions or discussion? Councilor Dormer.
Just a discussion item. I think I tried to understand a little bit the financial picture that Health Trust is able to paint through its through the publicly available documents that they have from their that basically look at the finances of the company and the actuarial evaluations and recommendations for how to how to proceed in the future, and whether their operations are safe and sound and use commonly accepted standards. And there was simply nothing that I could find that seemed indicative of any issues that would require such drastic legislation as this proposes, which is essentially introducing uncertainty into a situation that is trying to create predictability, which is having a risk pool so that you're taking unpredictability out of the picture. This is doing the exact opposite. And if Health Trust were to shut down, that would mean that municipalities and other public entities, including, by the way, Coast, it was quite a discussion item at the last Coast board meeting. Coast is also utilizing Health Trust for its health insurance, as we know, many municipalities and school districts throughout the state. It would increase costs to municipalities if they are able to obtain comparable health insurance, and therefore it would also increase our property taxes as property taxpayers. There's no upside to this bill. Essentially there's only detriment. There's nothing, no benefit to it at all. And as such, I'm really perplexed that a bill like this has gotten as far as it has and wasn't judged inexpedient to legislate just upon arrival, because it doesn't. It's very unclear to me where where the impetus comes from, as Councilor Blackstone suggested, and where the benefit lies. So I would urge us to pass this resolution today, to provide the town manager with another tool to communicate the urgency that we feel around this bill, and help ensure that the House does only the right thing, which is to table this bill.
Thank you, Councilor Dronglet. Councilor Matina.
The town manager, do you have an idea how many towns, cities and towns are in this pool?
You know, I don't, because it fluctuates every year. It is the largest in the state. Health Trust is the largest, followed by School Care, and then New Hampshire Interlocal Government Trust.
So there are a fair number of other communities.
Oh,
that are
gosh,
gonna
yeah, I
vote
think
and-
besides Manchester and Nashua, who are self-insured, I think Concord maybe now, most others are in a risk pool. So you're talking 231 communities? Plus
I would-
other agencies, coast, schools, yeah.
I'd just say, I would hope that if there's a fair number of other communities that are impacted by this, that it makes it easier to kill it.
We hope.
Yeah.
One of the things that was in your report was Health Trust's assertion that if this were passed, they would have to shut down in, like by 2026, like they'd be completely just kind of out of business. So I have two questions, but the first one is, can you, I'm trying to absorb all this, but can you kind of walk me through why? Like what would be, like, why would Health Trust close up shop?
So, that's one thing we are trying to get more information. We don't know if we don't understand why they have to shut down versus, change, if they follow different rules. Yeah, I think their concern is they're gonna be over-regulated, and they're not gonna be able to provide the assistance, as well as the rates are gonna go so high because they're gonna have an outside entity instead of the board of directors saying you don't have enough. So they're gonna be changing the rates. Tomorrow afternoon, I gotta check my calendar, we have a town hall with the Health Trust who's gonna go over the rationale to the municipalities. We just haven't had the chance to have that yet.
Okay.
So that is one question that is out there.
Okay.
I'm sorry, did you ask the second one?
No, I haven't
Okay.
asked the second one yet. Okay, so I know that one of the things that you had mentioned was that there seemed to have potentially been maybe some flip-flopping of perspectives around, one of the kind of primary drivers of the bill. And there's different, situations at different times, and that's fine. Your assessment of, I understand sort of the stated motivation. What is your assessment of the actual motivation for this particular bill? What is it they're actually trying to accomplish?
To be frank,
Yeah.
to dismantle the Health Trust.
Okay, and to what end? Like,
To
what?
not,
That's the question, isn't it?
they believe that the Health Trust, they believe that two organizations are detrimental. The Health Trust, who provides health insurance to all the municipalities and who are governed by their own members, we're all local officials, and ultimately the New Hampshire Municipal Association, because they testify on bills that support municipalities and oftentimes goes against two groups, the Secretary of State's office as well as labor organizations. So there's been a number of bills introduced this year to not allow municipalities to join, lobby. Luckily, that was killed. In our legislative delegation, got rid of it. That would have been, we didn't know what the impact of that would have been. That could even be, since you pay me a salary, I couldn't go to Concord to testify in a bill because I'd be a lobbyist. So luckily that was voted down. That's my opinion. I know if you ask a good number of other municipal officials states, that would be their opinion as well.
Okay.
So,
Does anybody else have any other questions? I have one more, but I'll stand down if other folks have any other comments.
Please continue.
Okay. So my other question is, if this is a devil's advocate
Yeah.
question, so please take it in the spirit in which it's offered. If this is such an evil thing, why was it unanimously passed by the Senate? Like, that seems like a pretty big hurdle to get over for what are a lot of pretty reasonable people.
it was done by a parliamentary procedure. It went, I believe it was even on the consent calendar, which does not necessarily have debate, and the consent calendar was approved unanimously. That's like ministerial documents that you don't get into the big debates on. It was just a report from that committee. There was opposition to that, at the hearings, but the Senate has the right to put the bills where they want, and if they don't want to have it taken off, that's why they did it. I talked to Senator Perkins Quokka. She was not, and she's also the minority leader in the Senate. She was not aware of all the information before the vote. It was rushed so quickly, it wasn't out there.
Okay. Wow. Okay, that's not great. Okay, Councillor Dornblow.
And if you, to that point, or to that question, if you read the justification that the Secretary of State's office, through their consultant, provided, it is language that implies well-intended desires to approve solvency, to ensure fairness. The language is very benign. However, and this is just my opinion based on what I've gleaned here. The additional requirements and how they're structured would, one, put a greater onus on municipalities to provide essentially risk funds themselves to insure against risk from the risk pool. So it's kind of a weird attempt. That's the 1% to up to 4% that the town manager referenced. And the other is that it would increase oversight, unprofessional oversight, if you will. Rather than having oversight by the Department of Insurance, for example, over the risk pools, it would be oversight by the Secretary of State's office, which doesn't necessarily have the capacity to evaluate the highly complex structures that risk pools are. And I think that it's kind of using tools that are not necessarily designed or will not meet the stated outcomes, desired outcomes. So I think there's a mismatch here, and if you want to be be nice about it, I guess it's a mistake, right?
Okay.
I think that's probably not the case, based on the history, and based on the way this bill was ushered through the Senate. It was done in a way to reduce debate and reduce the opportunity for dissent to even arise.
Thank you, Councillor Dornblow. Any other comments or question or discussion on this resolution?
Just one
Councillor
for
White.
the town manager. You said you had contacted, or you've attempted to contact our delegation within the House of Representatives.
I have sent letters already saying, please, when it comes to you, oppose this. I'm going to continue to do so.
Yeah.
If this passes this evening, they'll all receive. I'm going to send this to probably every legislator and every senator in the governor's office as soon as we get it.
Okay. Any other discussion? Council Ward.
And if we approve it, could we also put it on the town website?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Okay. Seeing no other discussion, if you could call the roll, please.
Council Blaisberg.
Aye.
Council Lamantina.
Aye.
Council Dornblow.
Aye.
Council White.
Aye.
Council Blackstone.
Aye.
Council Ward.
Aye.
Council Conley.
Aye.
Motion passes 7-0.
Okay. And that ends our resolutions and ordinances in the first and second reading. It is now time for, last item on our agenda is new business and correspondence. Is there any correspondence to the town council to be read into the record this evening?
There is none.
Okay. And last item is closing comments by town councilors. Are there any closing comments? that anyone would like to make today? Councillor Dornbluth.
I neglected to say this under committee updates, but I think you'll be pleased to know that Coast did apply for rural transportation funds to replace essentially, I don't know if you recall, the funds that have been used thus far to operate Route 7 are going away as of the end of this year, and Coast has applied for funds to replace those, which would allow both Exeter and Newmarket to retain service. How the service will be structured, likely a little bit differently, but if it is, it will be to our favor because there's more flexibility that these funds allow. So hopefully that will bring public transit services here in Newmarket into a place that is more accessible and more available outside of the current kind of zone that restricts access to essentially the corridor around the village and then going down 108. So that's hopeful thing to have on the table.
Thank you, Councillor Dornbluth. Other closing comments this evening? I'll only just say that please turn out on the 27th, and we'll have another meeting before that, but for the roadside cleanup day. It's usually a great time and great opportunity. And I'm not a huge fan of telling people to go on social media, but that's where we get all our information. So please check out the Newmarket Facebook page, Newmarket Instagram, and get those maps and start making those alternate route kind of plans before things hit. Councillor Lamattina.
The town manager just mentioned the Charter Commission sign-up dates.
You would ask me. I forgot off the top of my head. That's okay.
Thank you for that.
Let me pull it up so I don't get it wrong. I know the election. Just was finishing a document on it too.
It's in April.
The election will be May 13th, and the candidate filing period opens the 16th of April and closes on the 25th, which is a Friday, which will be open from 3 to 5 for special hours. 9 seats.
When is the election again? May 5th?
May 13th.
May 13th. April 16th to 25th, filing period, election. Okay.
There is a page on the website for the Charter Commission, which is being populated with all the information beforehand.
Excellent reminder, Councilor Lamattina, thank you. Okay, any other closing comments this evening? Okay, seeing none. Our next meeting is April day that I can't remember right now.
16th.
April 16th.
Yeah.
And if there are no objections, then I will consider us adjourned. All right, thank you very much, councilors.